from New York, it's That Kevin Show.
See, I knew it.
Come on, Kev. What's a few classified documents between friends?
I told you all the time. I knew it. I knew he had some too.
Here he is, That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. And I'm always glad to welcome back my next guest. She's a former active duty agent for the FBI who walked away from that post just a little while ago because of her disillusionment with the corruption in the DOJ at large, and sometimes the dysfunction of that agency specifically. But it was especially painful because she joined the agency out of a desire to serve her country in the aftermath of 9/11. I'll never forget the inspiring story that Nicole Parker has lived in her desire to serve her country in the some of the troubling days that we have been in. And she joins us once again right now. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate joining, Kevin.
Well, it's fun to have you. I wish it was under better circumstances, but there are a lot of angles to this recent verdict by Judge Marchand in Lower Manhattan that I have not explored, mostly because I just haven't had the right people on the show to talk about them with. But when we're talking about watching the justice system at work, when we're talking about the amount of resources used to put on this dog and pony show for the last 6 weeks, when you talk about the reinvention of the law that they had to come to even come up with a charge to try to figure out what they were doing, and then you talk about the undoing of legal precedent, like having unanimity amongst the jury. There are a lot of barriers that have been broken in this dog and pony show, this kangaroo circus court proceeding that we've just witnessed. Nicole, as someone who was in the field watching, how do you think this has impacted people's view and confidence in law enforcement, in justice, in the Justice Department, in the experience of justice in America?
You know, Kevin, those are all extremely important questions to be asking right now for Americans to truly reflect and to understand. And having been a former FBI special agent, I was working criminal matters. I was taking cases, I was taking evidence, I was receiving information from regular citizens about alleged crimes that occurred. I would take that information, I would do a full investigation, and I would determine, was a crime committed or was it not? And then I would take that information and evidence to the U.S. Attorney's Office, to an AUSA, present it, and then they would make a decision on whether or not they were going to prosecute the case. I can tell you there is a lot of work that needs to be done in this country. Things are we're in a very tough situation right now. And as we're seeing in many cities nationwide, violent crime is out the roof. Different crimes are just rampant. And to look at the amount of resources, time, and energy that was spent in the city of New York, of all places, for something that did not merit ever entering a courtroom, in my opinion, it's actually very insulting to the criminal justice system. And I think what it does is it destroys the trust of the American people in the legal system. We are a country founded on liberty and justice for all. And there's a key element here. You have the right to a fair trial. And what occurred in New York with former President Trump, in my opinion, based on my experience, was anything but fair. And to bring on a case that had been already been declined by Department of Justice, had been declined even by the office that ended up charging it. It reeks of politicization. It reeks of, we're in fear of an individual who is now the top and forefront running candidate, and we will do anything that we can to stop them. And, you know, people say, oh, you know, people that believe that, that's just conspiracy. I can tell you it is not conspiracy. It is a fact. And to see the amount of energy that went into that, when you're seeing everything else falling apart in our country, it's just a lack of prioritization. And frankly, it was not fair. I looked at what occurred, and I've been to trials. I've taken cases to trials, and that is not how it works in the courtroom. The way that jury instructions were delivered, the way that everything came about, it just, every step of the way, I thought, that's not normal. That's not how it's supposed to be. And it's almost like they had their own set of rules for this. And that's absolutely terrifying. And sadly, when you weaponize even the local justice system, it hurts local, state, and federal law enforcement. And it makes it difficult to have any sort of motivation, even as an FBI agent. I can tell you, I am in touch with many law enforcement officers, and they are absolutely horrified by what happened. And it makes them want to leave in droves, because no one wants to be a part of that. Those that have integrity, do not want any part of any sort of trial or case or sham trial of that nature. And we're seeing it over and over. I mean, this week is Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is in trial. I'm not hearing as much about Hunter Biden as I did about President Trump. I'm not hearing much at all.
And he committed an actual felony, like to have a gun, to possess a gun in the committing of a crime, or I'm sorry, in the while you are in fact a drug addict, to possess the gun, to use the gun, to own the gun, to purchase the gun. Those are all felonies that he should be on trial for. But what President Trump did in labeling legal expenses as legal expenses is somehow worth way more press time than a president's son who actually did commit felonies.
Well, and I think what's important to note here is what Hunter Biden was charged with was actually the minimum amount that they could have charged him with. He actually committed many more crimes, and there seemed to be very solid evidence based on whistleblowers that I seem to trust in the IRS and all of the information that came forward. And he was not actually charged with those things. He was charged with the minimum amount that they had to charge him with to make it look like the justice system had not been politically weaponized. Whereas President Trump, they're digging up something that occurred how many years ago?
9 years.
And they're making things up. And again, it's just not the way that our country is supposed to function. And when you do these sorts of things, it destroys the credibility of the entire legal system. And Americans, that again, this is not about President Trump. This is not about whether or not you love him, love Biden, hate Biden. It's about truth. And it's about fair and equal justice. And when you are given a certain amount of power at the DOJ, at law enforcement levels, you cannot use that power against your political enemies. Judges, prosecutors, they are given a tremendous amount of power, and they are entrusted to exercise that power fairly and justly. And again, President Trump really didn't stand a chance. He was in the jurisdiction of New York, a jurisdiction that doesn't favor him at all, according to the voting poll records. But you know what? It shouldn't matter. It should be about the facts and the evidence. I hate to say it now, and even as a former agent, it's all about who's your judge and what jurisdiction are you taking this case to trial. You know that you have a much better chance of getting a conviction in one jurisdiction versus another, and that's exactly what happened here. This was a judge that highly favored one side, the prosecution, which is not how it should be. And then you had a jury that President Trump didn't really stand a chance to have a fair trial. They refused to move the venue. And so it's one thing after another. The cards were stacked against him. Look, it happened, and now he has been convicted. But I don't know that Americans are really trusting this conviction, frankly. I don't think they put a lot of weight into it because I don't think that they trust that it was fair.
Well, all the polling thus far is showing that it's made zero, not 0.0, like 0.0 impact on people's view of the election, which I think, the Biden administration will just take that and just kind of lump it into the rest of the denial that they're living in. They really honestly believe that they're not in trouble. They don't think the poll numbers are reflecting accuracy. I almost wonder if they think that they can cheat and get away with rigging an election to try to, overcome all of this. But at the end of the day, the American people have spoken loudly. $200+ million raised since the verdict directly. And it's kind of disproving this idea that there's a limited amount of resources for politics. Americans want America to operate the way our founders designed it. And you're seeing people on every side of the political divide come to President Trump's defense because they know that this ran afoul of that.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.